Okay, so according to my watch, it is 5:30 and we shall start this meeting officially. So hello everyone, welcome once again to the CARE360 public meeting space. Once again, I'm Miriam Lakay, Dr. Miriam Lakay. I will be your host tonight. Today I have with me three important guests who are going to share with us their experiences talking about this topic that is a very sensitive topic, but very exciting topic in our country and in our culture. So the people that we have today, we have Deborah Ojiambo, who is from Safe Haven, Uganda. Welcome, Deborah. It's great to see you, looking bright and happy on a Friday evening. Then we have with us Moses Mpanga.
Thank you, Miriam.
You're welcome. Then we have Moses Mpanga, who from the Parenting Guide. Those of you who are on Facebook and following his page have seen the work that he's done, enormous, exciting work with young people. Moses, you are welcome.
Thank you for having me.
And then later, as we go along, we shall have Dr. Sabrina Kitaka, who heads the Adolescent Friendly Clinic in Mulago Hospital, joining us to share the experiences she has as a doctor, but also as a person working with young people. So the first thing that we are going to do is we're going to conduct a poll. I'm going to set out a poll and I'm going to ask you to respond to the poll. Just relax because the responses are confidential. No one is going to know that you answered the questions, but it's going to help to guide the people who are speaking today on what areas that they need to talk about. So I know we have adolescents who are attending this meeting today. So the first poll, which you can see right now, it's launching, there it is. It says, have you had a discussion on, this is for parents, have you had a discussion on sexuality with your adolescent? So let's have the adults who are attending this meeting answer the question. I'll give you 1 minute. And after the minute is up, I will show you the results of the poll. 30 seconds to go. Remember, it's confidential. I don't know who is answering what, and no one else knows who is answering what. So no one is ever going to know. We have 20 seconds to go. 9, 8, 7, 6, 5, 4. If you haven't answered, we are almost done. And there we go. I will show you the results. So there are our results. Moses and Deborah, make sure you see the results. Hold on. Can you see the results? So according to the results, 68% of the adults who are watching, who are with us today, say they have had a discussion with their adolescent on sexuality, and 32% say no. So it looks like we are sort of preaching to the choir here. Okay, I will ask another question, and now it's going to go to the young people who are with us. Stop sharing results, okay. So the next question is going to go to the young. So this question goes to, okay, let's have both adults and the children answer this question. It says, at what age should we start talking to children about sexuality? Let's have everybody attending answer this question. Adults, children. Okay, I'm giving you a minute as well. People who are listening in, please mute yourself. We shall give you time to speak as well. Just make sure you're muted. Okay, we have 6 seconds to be done with the poll. 2 seconds, and there we go. Okay, we are ending our polling. I'm going to share the results with you right now. Do you see the results? So according to the results, 69% of the people listening in believe that we should start talking about sexuality in primary school, and 31% say O-level is the ideal time to start. So today, this evening, we are going to find out when is the ideal age to start. Is primary school too young? Is A-level the right time? Is it O-level? Is it after A-level? University students maybe, because they are more independent and they're more exposed. So we shall hear about that as we go along. Thank you for participating in the poll. So as we start, I'm going to give a brief overview about adolescence and sexuality. So Dr. Sabrina, you're welcome. Thank you for joining us. I made an introduction. I told them you would be here because I knew you would be here. So thank you for joining us. So I will give a brief overview about adolescence and sexuality. Really, the reason why we have chosen of all topics available on earth to talk about sexuality. Okay. So I thought this was an interesting slide to share. When I was preparing this presentation, I Googled stages of life, and one of the cartoons that popped up was this one, and I thought it was really appropriate for our discussion today. So just to explain what the cartoon says, it shows the adolescent, who is the first young man over there. It says, this is what he's thinking about. It is sex, 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 and sex. And then when he gets to university age, he's still thinking a lot about sex, but a little bit about money. And as they grow older, they're thinking more about money. And at a certain age, about 50, 60, it's money, toilet, money. You see, sex has disappeared now. And then in their 70s, it's money, toilet, toilet, and then it is just thinking about the toilet. I thought that was funny and appropriate to what we're going to discuss today. So one thing that I've experienced in the work that I do with young people and also with adults, when we get to the topic of sexuality, many parents say they are not comfortable talking to their young people about sexuality because most of the time people think sexuality means sex. As in, even when we said we would have this discussion today, people were saying, how can you talk about sex on a public forum? And I was like, no, sexuality and sex is not exactly the same. Sex is just one of the expressions of sexuality. And if you look at this next picture, what really tries to describe sexuality, all the little words that you see on this image down here are in a way related to sexuality. So sexuality is not just about sex. Sex is one of the components in the broad term sexuality. So then the question is, what is human sexuality? So human sexuality is easily defined as how people experience and express themselves as sexual beings. Human beings and all living things are actually sexual beings because that is the way in which life is propagated through a form of sexual relationship. And so we feel our sexuality and we express our sexuality. It's a myriad of things, a combination of a myriad of things, of our sexual feelings, their thoughts, attractions, behaviors with ourselves, and behaviors towards other people. So once again, sexuality and sex are not synonymous. One is a subset of another. What about adolescent sexuality? So adolescent sexuality refers to that stage in human development where young people go through intense physical and emotional sexual experiences and they start to explore their sexual feelings. What determines it? First of all, it is normal, it is the anatomy. When a child is born in the labor room, they tell the parent, your baby is a boy or is a girl. They're looking at their anatomy, what the body looks like. They look at the genitals. Doctors and nurses don't look at the baby's fingers and say, you know, this baby's fingers make this baby look like a boy. We look directly at the genitals. The other aspect is the physiology, how the body works. And I will briefly talk about that in the next slide. So once again, sexuality in adolescence is normal. Just because your child seems to be obsessed with sex, thinking about sex, dressing up to look attractive, they're just not being weird. That is how they are. And this picture is a simple picture which shows the physiology, what is happening. So there's this small thing in the brain, called the pituitary gland. And this gland secretes chemicals that are called hormones. And some of the hormones that it produces are responsible for sexual growth and sexual maturation. As you see in this picture of the young man, you see aspects of his anatomy are changing. The testicles grow big, the penis grows bigger, and the children begin to experience wet dreams. And when you look at the girl, her breasts begin to grow, and it is not just for her looks, the body is actually preparing her to suckle a baby. Her hip becomes wider because the body is preparing her to birth the baby. Her ovaries mature and begin to develop eggs, which can develop very easily into a baby. And then she begins to menstruate, which is a sign that actually her ovaries are now producing eggs. So the body is actually beginning to prepare itself for parenthood. And as teenagers, the teenagers who are listening, you'll notice that these hormones take control of your body. You notice that your emotions begin to change. I was talking to one teenager last weekend and she said, you actually feel angry and you don't know why you're angry, or you feel teary and you don't know why you're teary. It affects your moods, your emotions, and suddenly you have these strong sexual feelings. A girl once told me that, she's a 13-year-old. She said, suddenly, I'm looking at my teacher in class and I'm feeling sexually attracted to him. He has never approached me. I had never thought about him this way, but I don't know why this is happening to me. So really what is happening physically and in the brain and in the physiology, in the chemicals in the body, is that your body is being prepared for parenthood. And this evening, we are going to hear about the fact that even if your body is preparing for parenthood, like any animal, adolescent humans are not yet ready to take on the role of parenting. And we shall talk about that today. What else determines adolescent sexuality? Their perception of what it means to be male and what it means to be female. And these are things that they learn as they grow up in society, as they live with people of different backgrounds, as they hear, as they read. It determines what they think a male person should be and a female person should be. And that affects their sexuality. Community norms also determine the sexuality of an adolescent. And by community norms, I mean the different groups of people that an adolescent interacts with from the time they're a little child to the time that they are an adolescent. It may be tribal traditions. In some cultures, it's only the auntie who talks about sex, or it is talked about, their sessions that are done at night or whatever. And those traditions affect how an adolescent experiences their sexuality. Faith communities. There are communities that preach only abstinence. Many of the Christian communities preach abstinence. And because the community preaches abstinence, this adolescent who identifies as that faith will be made to experience their sexuality in that direction or hide certain components for that reason. A faith that accepts polygamy. The adolescent growing up in this faith is more likely to experience their sexuality in a way that accepts polygamy, unlike one who is from a faith community that doesn't accept it. Family, the kind of families we grow in, how is sexuality handled in our families? Is it very secretive? Is it a no-go area? Was the child beaten at 5 years old for touching their genitals? So the family dynamics also affects how a child experiences their sexuality and expresses it. The society, the friends they interact with, the people they meet wherever, people they observe, all those contribute. Media has a really strong role now, and we're going to have a session. Dr. Sabrina is going to tell us quite a bit about that. Media is these days really influencing the way young people are experiencing their sexuality. And then the experiences of life. Studies have shown that children who grow up in homes where they are loved from when they're very young are most likely to have a normal sexual experience as adolescents. Their sexuality is more normal, more organized as adolescents. Unlike a child who has grown up in a home where there's rejection, they don't feel accepted, they are ignored, the experience is different. And the same goes with a child or an adolescent who has experienced abuse. So while all this is happening, the hormones are raging, the body is changing, the teenagers, which is really annoying to parents, tend to be risk takers. They tend to be impulsive. They're secretly taking drugs, experimenting with sex, meeting strangers without informing their parents, escaping from home, dabbling in pornography, taking alcohol and drugs, sharing nude photos, and parents don't understand what is going on. In our previous sessions, the meetings we've had, we've talked about the development of the brain, and we went into detail about that. But really, in summary, what is happening is that while the primitive part of the brain of these adolescents, which we call the amygdala, this tiny little thing, is controlling their impulses, trying to get them to go out there and to become parents, the part of the brain that is rational, that should be making decisions for them, which is this area here, is still developing. And this development, unfortunately, goes on until mid-adulthood and mid-20s, and sometimes even the late 20s. So adolescents are at a high risk for getting into sexual mishaps. And that is why we are having this meeting today. So finally, before I hand over to the next speaker, I just want the adolescents that are listening and the parents to know that, one, it is very normal that your adolescent is now aware of their sexuality. They have no control over what is happening in their brain, what is happening in their bodies. It is making them think about sexuality. Two, it is normal that they feel impulsive. The question is that what do they do with the feeling of impulsivity? And then finally, the experiences within the societies that they live in determines how they experience their sexuality, how they express their sexuality, and the risks that they take. And this is where the role of people, adults, like adolescents, like counselors, like doctors come in. How are we talking to the young people about sexuality? When are we talking to them about sexuality? How safe are we making them feel? So that is where this comes in. So the next presentation is going to come from Dr. Sabrina. Dr. Sabrina is going to talk to us about the risks that are associated with sexuality in young people. It is a broad topic. It could take us a week to discuss it in detail. So she's going to share with us her experience dealing with young people, the risks that she has seen associated with adolescent sexuality. But specifically, she's going to dedicate some time talking about pornography. So I will stop the screen share now and invite Dr. Sabrina to introduce herself and to take us to the next session. Sabrina, you're welcome. Sabrina, you're muted. Please unmute yourself.
Yes, as I was saying, Miriam, thank you so much. I enjoyed listening to your presentation, and it's a great opportunity for me to be here discussing the topic of sex and sexuality among adolescents. As you all know, Uganda doesn't have very good statistics. Nearly 1 out of every 4 girls in Uganda is already pregnant by the time they are 19 years. And also we know that the largest contributor of maternal mortality, when we say that 16 women die every day, we include girls and adolescents below the age of 19 who die because they've procured an unsafe abortion. They die because their uterus ruptures while they are delivering. So the topic of sex and sexuality is extremely important. I'd also like to say at this point that our constitution declares the law of defilement, that if anybody has carnal knowledge with anyone below the age of 18, they commit a felony of defilement. That means that if a 14-year-old girl and a 16-year-old boy have sex with each other, they are actually committing a felony called defilement. And why does the law put all these rules there? Especially when young people feel that, you know what, sex is a good thing, we want to experiment, etc. Why are they stopping us? Because there are complications and there are consequences. If, for example, a young person walked into our clinic and said, you know what, my girlfriend is urging me to have sex with her. My first question to this young person, let's say it's a 16-year-old boy, would be, are you ready to buy Pampers? Do you know the cost of Pampers? And that shakes them out of their, plan. Because a 16-year-old boy can actually become a parent, he can become a father. Even a 12-year-old boy can become a father. You can imagine a 12-year-old boy being a father and cannot afford even the simplest thing, a pamper. One pamper costs 1,200 shillings. And guess what? It's thrown into the drain. So we generally discourage young people from sexual indulgence early. Miriam, I don't know if you'll allow me to share my screen, because I'll talk about pornography later. But I thought that this conversation should include parents not creating a sense of taboo among the word sex. In many of our languages, like I keep saying, sex means bad manners. But actually, sex is not bad manners, and sex is enjoyable. But it should be done at the right time, in the right place, and with the right person. The preserves of sexual activity should be for enjoyment, yes, but mostly for preservation of life. And the more we talk about sex and say, you know what, it should only be for enjoyment, then it means that we are killing the actual purpose for which it was made, which is procreation. And we know that in religion, at least for Christians, we believe that the family is the basic unit of governance. Right now, there's been a lot of politics, you know, and governance and who's going to rule who and what, but governance starts with a family. And as long as families are organized, as long as children understand that there's a leadership protocol, then there'll be no problem with governing our population. But if you destroy the basics of humanity, which is having a family structure, then you've destroyed everything. When you normalize sex for young people, then they will not even understand the basic concepts of, I should be responsible for the consequences. And I'm not trying to scare anyone or lecture anyone, but I would like that the young people with whom we grow and groom, we should make them responsible for their actions. And like Dr. Miriam has already shared, the brain is still growing, and a young person or an adolescent is definitely not ready for the consequences of having sex at that time. Principally, when sex is started early, then the consequences, e.g. pregnancy, STIs, responsibility of parenting at an early age, dropping out of school, are simply unmanageable for a young person to go through. And I know that young people will say, oh, we can choose the option of masturbation. Yes, in pediatrics, we know that fondling and masturbation is a phallic stage in psychology that happens around the age of 5. And when parents start to hit their child, and instead of explaining to them that, you know what, touching that place is just helping the child understand who they really are, they will outgrow it. But when masturbation becomes a habit, then the person won't even need the desire to, when they become married or they get a partner. I'm not sure if people are hearing me. Miriam, can you hear?
Yes, I can, Sabrina.
Okay, very good. So I was just saying that masturbation can become a real addiction because it gives a kick, a high. When people get excited about masturbation, it can become a real problem and a mental health problem. We've treated patients who have come into our clinic who have had addiction to masturbation. There was one individual who was masturbating in the presence of women, and they almost killed him, you know, because they thought he was trying to rape them. And he had to be brought in and counseled and taken to a psychiatrist. So he had gone beyond. And we need to be careful with things of addiction. Addiction of pornography, addiction of masturbation, addiction of screen time. All of these are dangers to young people, and we need to avoid them. I was watching a video clip last night, which really scared me, of a 17-year-old boy who became addicted to his PlayStation in France. This is a big story that has recently happened. I'm not sure if other people watched it, but this 17-year-old was so addicted to his PlayStation game. And when the domestic worker switched off the Wi-Fi in the house, he threw a tantrum and killed his father, his mother, his brother, his sister, and the domestic worker. And when the police walked into that house, they found this 17-year-old continuing to play with his PlayStation. And he actually told the police, "Ale, please hold on, I'm still playing." And he had killed his siblings. He had killed his parents and the domestic worker. So I'm just going to share with you really quickly about pornography, that the media targets young people because they know they can easily get addicted. And pornography is a consumptive agenda. The more you consume, the more you get addicted. The more you get addicted, the more you get trapped. So Miriam, if you'll allow me to just quickly share. I'm not sure if I can do that.
I have given you the permission.
Okay, let me see if I can share. So what I'm sharing is, I'd like to say, can you see the screen share, please?
It is starting. Yes, we do. We can see it.
Okay, so I just want to say that parents are listening and young people also listening. Please know that silence is not an option. Whenever we would like to talk about this topic, we need to address it with parents. We should not just say no to pornography, say no to sexual fantasies, because sexual fantasies are physiological occurrences. However, we need to help our children understand why it is so dangerous. First of all, pornography and sexual fantasy, like I said, it's a trap. It is progressive. For most, it begins like an accident, but then it progresses into an intentional thing. And it creates a perpetual dissatisfaction that craves for more. So there is negative reinforcement. The internal battle rages until the individual succumbs to the temptation and rationalizes that pornography and sexual fantasies are normal, but they are not normal. Unfortunately, pornography is galore all over the internet. And there are some video games and etc. that even trap young people. They do facial recognition and they can recognize that this is a young person. I know that when I'm on my computer, the things that come as adverts on the side will be dresses, shoes, possibly conference calls, etc. But I am aware that some parents have noticed and have shared that when their children are on the computer, the side adverts that come on may actually be pornographic images. They may be in the form of cartoons. They may be in the form of semi-nude women or semi-nude men, and then the child gets attracted to those. So for us as parents, we should be very careful. First of all, to reduce the screen time that our children participate in, but also to once in a while, look and see what your child is watching. Pornography and sexual fantasy are addictive, but they are unfulfilling. It's like a lone fertilizer, which makes the soil dependent upon it. After a time, the lawn will not grow without it. In other words, if a person is addicted to pornography, all their mind will be thinking about is not just about, oh, I'm attracted to this girl in my class, but they will start thinking, how can I quickly go and watch a pornographic movie, a pornographic film? I have seen students in this university who have dropped out of school because of pornographic addiction. They cannot settle in class. All they are thinking about is, when is the next time I'm going to be free so that I can access a pornographic movie? Pornography and sexual fantasy actually turns people into consumers of people. Rather than genuinely take care of others, they start seeing people as objects and they would like to just use them. So what will that mean for their emotional stability and health? It's actually not going to be healthy. They cannot have healthy conversations. They cannot have healthy relationships because they think that people who participate in the pornographic movies are just objects. It's so difficult to have healthy relationships with people when people are addicted to pornography. And for me, worst and most important of all is that people can actually get depressed. They reach a point of no return and they become depressed. But we should be able to detect a person who is depressed because they are sad and lonely and they start judging themselves. How can I get out of this? And they have no one to go to. So just to summarize, pornography and sexual fantasy actually stunts brain growth. And in terms of brain growth, it's so important for all of us to know that the window of creativity stops at 25 years. If an adolescent or a young person does not utilize their brain to think about things that they can do, to create useful environment for their brains to grow bigger, to read books that are helping them to grow their vocabulary, then it's unfortunate that by the age of 25, if all that their brain is loaded with is pornographic material, they've lost the opportunity to become the next general manager, to become the next teacher, to become the next social influencer, because they have lost the plot. Ladies and gentlemen, I'm going to stop here for now, but I'd like to emphasize that we cannot stay silent, that we need to talk to our young people, that they should utilize their internet properly. The bullying on social media that leads to depression and whatever all comes because somebody tells a young person, please show me how your body looks. And before you know it, people are doing screenshots of Snapchat videos, of Instagram stories, etc. And what you may think is private may actually become viral in a matter of seconds. And that can destroy somebody's confidence. It can destroy that person's ability to walk out of their home with comfort. So it's important for us to tell our children the dangers so that we manage their expectations and ensure that when they grow up, they will be the responsible parents who will be having this conversation moving forward. Thank you so much for this opportunity. Once again, I'll stop screen share and I'll wait for any questions that may arise.
Okay, thank you. Let's give Dr. Sabrina a round of applause. Amazing. Thank you very much for sharing this really deep topic. I recently, about a month ago, attended a conference on pornography. And one of the catchphrases they used was, where there's a smartphone, there's pornography. Parents are giving children smartphones at the age of 8, at the age of 9, even younger. And we are not checking what the children are watching. One of my colleagues was telling me that she gave her children a phone, and normally what she does is she checks the video games that they play. So she said she checked level 1, level 2, the adverts were very clean adverts. But then one day she decided to check again. Her sons had reached level like 10. And at that point, the adverts that were coming in were pornographic adverts. So what the manufacturers are doing now is they know that there are parents who are keen and will check, but they're not going to check forever. So they make sure what you see in the beginning is fine, and then later on when you think it's okay, they begin to broadcast all sorts of things. The other thing that I've noticed when I was checking on my computer, I was trying to see how strong the firewalls were. So I set up Safe Search on Google. And I noticed even with Safe Search, there's a lot that still filters through. So there's a lot to do with the internet and with pornography. So as parents, we need to be alert, but also young people that are listening. If it is something that you are not comfortable doing in the presence of your parents or in the presence of another adult, then it is something you should not be doing. Just use that as a mantra. Let's remember that. And then finally, I've noticed that even on our TVs these days, the music that is played is a lot of soft pornography. One time I took one of my children to a clinic, and they were playing these videos that they show on TVs, was actually TV stations. And the pictures that I was seeing, I actually had to go to the receptionist and say, it is not right to be showing something like this, especially in a place where there are children. We were on the pediatric section, but that is what was being shown on TV. She said, but that is TV. And I was like, can't you see that there's a lot of nudity? So we really need to be alert. There's so much going on, and young people take responsibility. If you can't do it in the presence of your parent or an adult, then it is something you should not be doing. Once again, Dr. Sabrina, thank you very much. During question time, we will definitely ask you more questions. So before
Miriam, Dr. Miriam,
yes,
there are questions in the chat room. Mm-hmm. Michael Wambi said he received a message from IPPF, like masturbation is okay. When we talk about sexual health, we sometimes focus a lot on the medical side. Obviously, that's really not the point, but something key often doesn't get the attention it deserves: pleasure. We think pleasure for everyone should be central to positive sexual experiences, and knowing how to pleasure yourself can be empowering. Well, of course, Mr. Wambi needs to understand that there are limitations to everything. And that if you have, you must mitigate before it becomes an addiction. And for me, that's the point I'm making. That the young person needs to understand that they can spend their energy and pleasure themselves by doing exercise, learning how to cook, playing a good soccer game or a basketball game, and excelling and talking to people. Sometimes it's the loneliness that drives people to start trying to pleasure themselves. Let us not make these young people lonely to a point that they would like to get some form of self-gratification.
Thank you very much, Dr. Sabrina. I've seen more questions in that direction, but the good thing is that the next topic the next presenter is going to say something related to that. But before we jump there, I'm going to invite everyone to take part in this poll that I've launched. The question is, what message should we be giving young people about sexuality? There are two options. Please take your pick. We have 1 minute. Please make sure you participate. It will help us to address the topics. We have 30 seconds to go. About 40 people need to participate. We have 20 seconds to go. 10. Someone has said the questions are too tricky. Okay, so 1 minute is up. I will share the results. And those are our results. So, Dr. Deborah, while you present your piece, remember that 58% of the people listening in are saying we should preach only abstinence, and 42% are saying we should teach responsible sexual conduct. So, Dr. Deborah, you're welcome. Please take us through your session.
Thank you so much, Dr. Miriam. Let me see if I can share as well.
I've given you permission.
Okay, thank you. Ladies and gentlemen, it's nice to be here, to be part of, this presentation today. Something was happening.
Okay.
All right. Just a little bit about myself, and I've worked with young people for a long time. I was a teacher at King's College Budo, and working at Budo actually led me into this field. And I'm coming from the field of counseling psychology. I know Sabrina and Miriam are medical people. I'm a child therapist. And I've worked with children both in this country and in the US, where I did my doctoral training. So this is something I'm passionate about, being able to work with children at different levels. And my area, which I was asked actually to talk about, is how do we prevent teen sexual activity? And sexual activity can be very broad, you know, pornography, like Dr. Sabrina has talked about, texting, you know, sexual involvement. It might be sending nude pictures like the two ladies have talked about. All that is part of sexual activity. And I want to begin by inviting, you know, we have parents online, and I'm glad we have parents, also have young people. And we could actually talk about this for the whole day. But in the short time that I have, let me share some thoughts from my work as a therapist, as a psychologist, working with children and families, is what can we do to support our children and prevent them from getting sexually involved at a young age. And I'm glad, Dr. Sabrina, thank you, you've talked about some of the risks. If we begin getting involved as young people, what does that mean for us? As parents, you're very important. You're very vital in the life of your child, and you play a very important role in helping this child say no to sexual activity. The question I want first pose, what's your relationship with your child? I know, and I'm glad that Miriam, you put up a poll earlier on to ask, how comfortable are we to talk about sexuality with our children? What's your relationship with your child? Are you comfortable talking about sexuality? Are you comfortable telling your child, even saying you've had enough screen time, let's move to something else? You know, a relationship between a parent and a child is very critical in being able to help children say no. What about, do you have moral authority? Are you telling the child, do this, and yet you're doing something else? It becomes very difficult for adolescents to be able to do that when they are hearing double messages. Are the children, you know, on the screen, I have those, you know, this kind of figure with 3 heads. And sometimes as we interact with children, we are not consistent. One time they experience you in a different way. You are very kind, you're providing. Another time, the children are running away from you and they cannot tell you what is happening in their life. Another time, they don't even know, you're unpredictable. Now, when that environment is taking place, it is very difficult for children to tell you that this is what my peers are saying. This is what I saw on TV. It can be really difficult. So your relationship with your child is very, very important. If you're consistent and they experience you as somebody they're comfortable with, then you'll hear their story about what is happening. So the starting point is really at home. And as parents, are we consistent? Do we have a relationship that allows children to tell us what's in their world? And this is a .com generation. These children today, there's a lot that they know. That is true. And because they are .com, they are very quick and very swift. And we want to be able to have a conversation where children are participating with their parents. I want to suggest a few things this evening, and I'm very sure there's a lot more that you've been doing as well as parents, as young people, to be able to keep healthy. And I'm talking about prevention and curbing, because I know there are adolescents who probably have not been involved in dangerous sexual activities, but I also know there are adolescents who have already got involved. So I'm very mindful of that, is how do we curb continuous engagement? How do we prevent? One of those areas that will be very helpful is age-appropriate teen-parent communication, and that's what I've just been talking about. Now, from my work as a child psychologist, child therapist, one of the things I see over and over again is sometimes young people do not even know that this is sexual activity, that pornography is putting me at risk, that sending nude pictures, people who are naked, all that is part of sexual activity. That texting, sending somebody, you know, stories or things about sexual activity, all that is part of that big umbrella. And it is important for young people to understand that this is sexual activity within our context as our culture, and also which is age appropriate. That adolescents, this is what we need to know, that this is not healthy, and they need to know that, because sometimes they're not aware and then they get into trouble. So that conversation is very important, even for them to know the dangers. You know, sometimes as I interact with young people, actually they might be more scared of pregnancy than HIV. And yet they need to know that HIV is real. You know, sexually transmitted diseases are real. You may drop out of school. So they need to appreciate that there are dangers. When I choose to get involved sexually, I'm choosing to be a father at this age. That is a choice they are making, that the behaviors I'm engaging in are putting me at risk. As I mentioned earlier on, a healthy parent-child relationship is very, very important. It helps young people have a conversation. And young people always have interesting questions they want to ask you. As a teacher at King's College Budo, we actually had an interesting sex education program, school-based, and would have panel discussions, would engage the young people in many activities to just help them learn and even teach the others. And they would ask interesting questions. One time, as we were saying, you know, get involved in healthy activities so that you are able to deal with, you know, your sexual urges. As Dr. Miriam mentioned, young people are growing, and it's healthy for them to have those sexual feelings. And they were asking, how do I bring my sexual feelings under control? And one of them asked, do I need to go and play basketball at night? Because you were suggesting I could actually play some games. So they have interesting questions. They need a forum to be able to ask, but definitely they have a lot of energy, and playing games and any other physical activities helps them be able to control themselves and also grow in a healthy way. Now, one of the key risk factors that contributes to adolescents getting involved in sexual activity is peer pressure. Their peers are telling them, man, you mean you haven't done this? And even when they come, like boarding schools, you're coming from the holiday, you know, young people like talking about their conquests. You mean you haven't, how many girls did you have? You mean you haven't conquered this? And you know, others might think this other person is actually speaking the truth. And sometimes they're not even speaking the truth, but they want to appear powerful. So they tell them, this is something you can do. Everybody is doing it. So young people need help with resisting peer pressure. And you know, one of the characteristics of adolescents is they actually appreciate their peers, sometimes much more than adults, much more than teachers and parents. So peer pressure is one of those risk factors, and we want to help the young people be able to deal with peer pressure. One of the ways is develop their values, develop their self-worth, so that I know who I am. When I know who I am, it's easier for me to resist peer pressure. Also, we can nurture positive peer pressure so that we have youth who are able to challenge others. That's one of the things we're doing at King's College Budo. And that's one of the things I do as I work with young people, is want to encourage positive peer pressure. Not everybody is doing it. There are some people who are not doing. And it is more courageous not to do it than those who are saying everybody is doing it. So we need to support them to resist peer pressure. And then boundaries. Over and over again, I see young people struggling with violating boundaries. And when they're not aware of the boundaries, they get into risky behavior. Unfortunately, some of our young people have been raped, defiled, partly because they have crossed a boundary. You know, it might be, I want to go for this party, and my parents are saying, no, wait, you come back at this time. But young people think, you know, these old people do not know, this is really fun. But you know, I might stay very late, and that is where I may get into trouble. I might actually take alcohol and drugs, and my dad or mom said, please, let's keep away from alcohol. But I have crossed a boundary when I eventually take alcohol. What about just going to somebody's house? When I go into this house, where do I go? You know, I work with many young people who have been sexually abused. And sometimes when they get into people's houses, like in the hostels, even at home, they are visiting neighbors. They may not think very fast that when I move into this person's bedroom, I may be at risk. That is a boundary as well. So we need our young people to be able to be aware of boundaries. Even dressing, you know, that sometimes would be at risk. I might dress in a way that makes it easy for others to take advantage of me because they are children, they are young, but some people may think that they are not adolescents because they've grown and then they're exposing their bodies. That is a boundary violation. So we want young people to appreciate that in a way that we are not lecturing them, but want them to appreciate. And usually I like asking young people to think about even my dressing, what message am I getting across? Because sometimes it puts them at risks. So they need some skills of how to be able to be mindful of boundaries and being able to be safe. And problem solving. One of the other risk factors that puts a young people in at risk of early sexual involvement is poverty. I need some money. And sometimes because I don't know how to solve my own problems, somebody takes advantage of me and gives me some money, and we struggle with poverty as a country. Or sometimes somebody just needs something extra, a little bit. You know, I used to, even right now, I keep telling young people that sometimes it just takes a few of the C's, giving me some chips, some Coca-Cola, some chicken, some chips, a cell phone, and I compromise. And because I'm not able to problem solve, I'm not quick at decision making, I become a victim very easily. Young people need those skills to be thinking, am I worth just a little bit of this to be able to get involved sexually, because I can't bring myself under control, or I put myself at risk. So they need to be helped with, I'm solving a problem, and then I can be able to protect myself. What about decision making? Now, sometimes some young people have got into trouble because somebody tells them, you come on, everybody is doing it, let's get involved. But because they are not quick at decision making, they are struggling with, okay, what is the effect of this decision? What does this mean for me? So if they don't have the skill set of quickly thinking about the consequences, they can be easily be pushed into engaging in sexual activity. And then they tell them, even if you get sexually involved, you'll quickly have something in the morning, and then you'll have that tablet and you won't get pregnant. You know, you want to help them be thinking in that moment. Think about what you're about to do, young people. And that's why we need to help them to be assertive, being able to say no. You know, when they tell them everybody is doing it, is it really everybody doing it? So we need to help our young people be able to say no and be able to be assertive, be able to speak for themselves. By the way, both boys and girls need to be able to say no in a respectful way, but be able to stand up for themselves. They have so much that they are able to do. And in our culture here, we are not very good at helping our young people to be assertive. And that's one of the things we help them to develop, is the ability to be assertive and say no. Now, developing assertiveness begins at home. Am I able to give them the skill set at school as well, so that they are able to say no? And then I want to suggest as well that it is important to encourage healthy expressions of male masculinity. Sometimes young men, young boys take advantage of girls because they think one of the ways to prove that I have grown and I'm a man is sexual involvement. Now, real men are able to respect ladies and wait. But we need to help young men know you can express yourself in a different way apart from proving through sexual engagement. But if you don't help them, we put them at risk. So it is important to encourage healthy expressions. You know, play some games, do some work, do some experiments, which is either science or in your workbooks, or just new skills in business, whatever it is. All those are healthy. And I think we need men to be good mentors, because when the men encourage the young men, and I think as a society, if we have many young men who respect women, we even reduce on sexual violence and abuse. And then I want to quickly look at this as well. Technology. My two colleagues have already talked about technology. This is a risk factor. Technology is great. It helps us. But young people need help with being able to use technology responsibly. Because if they are not able to, if they don't have information about internet safety and the skill set, then they get into trouble. There's so many young people now being exposed to sexual activity online because of technology and because they're not thinking. Just some basics. If somebody is inviting you for a chat online, young people, do you know what it takes? Are you feeling safe? Because they lure young people very easily. And you know, adolescents feel, I know everything, and sometimes that puts them at risk. So young people need help with technology. And sometimes, apart from, you know, trying, and you know, it can be difficult as a parent, keep saying you're checking your phone for your adolescents. But when an adolescent is hiding out from the rest of the family when they are looking at their screen, you know, that is one of the danger zones, that maybe they're seeing something that is they're not comfortable with, and the rest of the family does not want to see. That's one of those quick tips. Now, usually, you know, research has demonstrated this. We see it a lot in our work as therapists. When we nurture self-esteem of children, a child who has healthy self-esteem, most times will not want to get involved in sexual activity because they know who they are. If another one is pressurizing them, please, you know, if you really care about me, you're going to do this, this person is able to say no. It's easier for them to bring themselves under control when they have healthy self-esteem. And that might involve encouraging young people. You know, you are able to do this on your own. You know, that's amazing how you've actually been able to accomplish this. And something I notice a lot in our culture is sometimes we focus more on fault finding than encouraging young people. we build their esteem by encouraging them, looking at their strength, and that helps them be able to feel confident and feel comfortable with who they are. And then I think we need to address early and frequent dating. Like I mentioned earlier, I did my PhD in the US, I've worked in the US and in Uganda, and our understanding of dating and our culture is very different. But what I see through the research consistently is when young people begin dating early and have frequent relationships like that, it puts them at high risk because it's more difficult for them to control themselves. They would arouse themselves much more. Something we need to reflect on and encourage our young people to think about that because it puts them at risk. And then spirituality. As a country, as Uganda, we are really interested in our spiritual beliefs and even world over. But young people who are engaged and are nurturing their spirituality and have something to draw from, that also helps them keep away. And as a family praying together, helping them to get involved in church activities, all that is very powerful and helpful for young people. And as parents, are we monitoring what your young person is doing? I do appreciate young people. I call them the dot-com generation. They are very smart. They may actually be able to bypass so many things. And as an adult, you may not know what they are doing. And one of the things we do is support parents with how else can you monitor? What skills can you get? We may equip you with that as well. But just being available and being able to see what is my young child, son or daughter seeing. It is important for them to be supervised. They are young. When they are left on their own, it can be very difficult. They may dive into a lot of activity. And now we all know that as a country, we've had increased defilement, sexual activity because the children are at home for a long time. So parents need to be more creative in monitoring our young people so that we prevent them from getting involved. Because once they get involved, there are so many risks involved. And then curbing the use of alcohol and drugs. Alcohol and drugs definitely puts young people at risk. And sometimes, and we could take a whole day talking about alcohol and drugs, it might be that this is what they are seeing in the environment, that they're encouraging each other to take alcohol, to take drugs. But once they take alcohol and drugs, it's difficult for them to bring themselves under control. And you may be aware that unfortunately these days, sometimes even when they go for parties, you know, even if it is soda, somebody might put some drugs in that soda, in that Coca-Cola. So young people need to be aware, even some basic skills of if somebody is giving you a soda, have you seen them opening it? Do your parents know where you are? So it's important for us to think about how do we help young people prevent addiction to alcohol. It happens gradually, but very fast, and we can lose our young people. Now, I want to say that sometimes some young people, unfortunately, have got to a point where you need professional help. And I want to encourage parents and young people, have a conversation with your parents. As parents, they may need counseling, they may need medical support for them to be able to handle situations they might be in. If they're already sexually involved, we may need to support them to help them bring themselves under control, because they may need therapy as well. And that is something that we can provide to help them walk through that process. And I want to quickly just stop sharing. I know we'll have opportunities to be able to ask some questions as well. So I want to stop here for a minute, and then I'll be happy to respond to any questions that you may have. Yeah. Thank you so much. Yeah.
Thank you very much, Dr. Deborah. Very insightful, a lot of information. I've seen questions that are coming up, and we are going to answer them as we go along. But we'll give a chance to Moses to speak before we move on. But really just to recap on some of the things that you said. So for parents that are listening here, when I talk to many parents, they are aware of pornography, they are aware of sex, and that is where they seem to stop. But it's important to know that these days when we talk about sexual activity, there is a lot more. There is sexting, there is sharing of nude photographs, and normally the people who they are sharing to first start with simple questions like, share a photograph of your feet. And before long, you know, the child is lifting up their bra, they're undressing themselves. There is making out, and that is a very common one. Children are seeing this from movies. It's really just a step before sexual intercourse. And somebody asked the question, what about kissing? And this relates to what Deborah said. When you start doing things like kissing, the next thing you know, you're going to need to move to the next step. The boundaries just keep falling and they keep falling. So as young people, it's really important that we look after ourselves, because you're still young, your brain is still developing, like we said, and it puts you at a lot of risk. Recently, I was talking to a doctor who had experienced an interesting teenager, a 19-year-old. And after speaking to her, he realized that there was a gap in communication at home. So he asked her whether she had ever spoken to her mother about sex. And this 19-year-old said, my mom, I know about sex, much more about sex than she actually does. So parents, our children are looking at us as dinosaurs. We need to up our game. We need to talk to them. And now, someone also asked a question just on the chat and said, is it okay to tell a 10-year-old that their mother is pregnant? Dr. Sabrina talked about this in her presentation. She said, unfortunately, in some tribes, the word sex means bad manners. And if we have that in our mind, then we are teaching young children that sex means bad manners. So when mom is expecting, then she has been doing bad manners. We need to tell them that sex is enjoyable, but it is meant for people of a certain age category. And as young people, they need to wait for their time because they are not yet mature enough to partake of this. So I want to move on to Moses. Moses, a number of parents I've talked to say they are afraid of talking to their children about sex because as young people themselves, they were total failures in that field. And so they think when they start talking to their children, they're going to be outed. Because if their child asks them, when did you wait till you were done with school? And actually they did not, then they will be stuck. You know how all parents in Uganda were #1 in school, which is a similar situation. So Moses, please take the floor and talk to us about how parents and adolescents should talk to each other about sex and sexuality.
Hello, everyone. Thank you so much, Miriam, for having me.
You're welcome.
And I'm glad to be here. But first things first. Several times I've realized or I've seen parents bring the attitude they usually bring for a job interview. They usually bring it when it's time to talk about sex with their children. First of all, if this can be dealt with for starters, if this can be dealt with, I mean, if you are to speak to children about sex, right now as we are speaking, we know that this is about our parents and adolescents, but there's a lot of parents here who haven't actually allowed their adolescents, it is possible, who haven't allowed their adolescents to be part of this because there was sex in this talk, you know? So if you're guilty about that, you could low-key, you know, acknowledge that, and if they are not here, you let them be part of this because this is going to be the beginning. And usually that's where the problem is. Now, I want to delve into a story, a simple story. During one of the workshops that I've had about parenting before, at the end, a parent approached me, and this is what she had to say. I am afraid. I usually see my child fondling himself. You know, he usually touches himself and he usually does this in public. And I do not know, is there anything which is wrong? And the mother was distraught. She was concerned because she had no idea how to deal with this. And this is what I had to share with the mother. You know, as children continue growing, physically, as they continue growing, certain areas of their body become important, you know, and they derive some kind of satisfaction from those different parts of the body. For instance, if you look at, there's what we call the phallic stage, that is around 3 to 6 years. You find that the child normally is touching him or herself, touching their private parts. And because parents do not know what this is all about, they are very, very, you know, shocked about saying this, you know, and this gives you clarity of how early children start being aware when it comes to sex. That's how early they start. Now, because this is something, it has always been a taboo that you cannot talk about this when it comes to private parts. And, you know, if you look at the poll that we said earlier, many parents say that they will start talking about sex when their children turn, maybe they're in primary. A majority of them say primary, and a little percentage say that maybe O level. Now, what is happening to a child who has started realizing the non-sexual attachment that he or she has with their private parts from 3 to 6 years. We are waiting for them. We are waiting to say this or to talk about this when they are actually probably 10 years or probably beyond 10 years. Now there is a gap in here in between. You know, psychology confirms or lets us know that these are things that naturally should happen. Now, when you look at the phallic stage that I've just talked about, which is 3 to 6 years, a child goes through that, and then the sexual attraction is to self. But as they continue growing to what is known as the genital stage, we have the genital stage that we do talk about in psychology. Now, under the genital stage, you will realize that these children have sexual attraction to other people. The sexual attraction has moved away from self to other people, you know, but all this time, a parent is thinking that, no, my child is not, this isn't the right time for me to talk about this. The child is not yet ready about this. But you see, every single speaker that has spoken right now has tried to show us how early children, how early aware they are about their sexuality, you know, about their sex, you know, about all these different parts that they have with them. Now, most of the times parents think that they are going to fit everything in one conversation. This is usually where the problem comes in from. You think that everything that you have not talked about for God knows how long, you are going to decide and have it in one conversation. This is why you're going to talk about, I'm saying this because it's a disclaimer. Why I'm saying it's a disclaimer is because after this chat, or after this meeting that we are having, very many parents are likely to go out and say, oh, we were told that we need to talk about, we need to be free with our children, we need to talk about sexuality, we need to talk about sex, and they're going to blow it all over, you know? Now, remember, you haven't been speaking to this child. Now, because you haven't been speaking to this child, you need to take bits by bits, because you need this child to be able to process whatever it is that you have to share with them. You know, and you give them time to reflect on whatever it is that you have talked about. Usually parents, one of the major questions that usually come is, when is the right time for me to talk about sex? Usually parents ask that, when is the right age for me to talk about sex? And I usually respond that find the child where the child is. You know, find out how much the child already knows and take it from there. Because it is not about you. You know, there are parents who usually come and they're telling me, oh, I do talk about sex when it comes to my children. We speak freely. And you want them to share what it is that they talk about. And they take you through a marathon of the information that they have at their stage. And that's what they do talk about with their children. You know, now you are actually talking about your experiences, the way you know them, without sieving them or without knowing what is right for the child according to where the child is. And then the other question that usually comes is that, how can I know the right information to share with my child? Now, there are things, keep your ear on the ground. When you do keep your ear on the ground, there are things that you're definitely going to be able to know. Dialogue with your child. We don't dialogue with our children. You know, it's very, very rare to find African parents dialoguing with their children. And if you can't dialogue with your child, there are things that you're going to miss out on. You would not know what they're all about, you know? Now, if you dialogue, there are questions that they're likely to be asking you. If they ask you those questions, you're going to be able to know where they are in terms of knowledge, where they are, if you do dialogue with them. But if you don't, it is very hard that you're going to be able to identify where they are and where you should start from. You know, information is always out there. You know, I recently read a post from a friend of mine, and this post, he was talking about a new song by a lady called Cardi B. If you have your adolescents there or teenagers, they should be knowing this song. It's called WAP. Now, this is the kind of information that is out there. This WAP song, it talks about, there's a lot of things that they say about sex, so many of them. Now, here we are, a parent is saying, no, my child is not ready, so we can definitely not talk about this. But this information is out there. If you do put in WAP by Cardi B on any of, maybe on any of the platforms here, or the internet platforms, you are likely to get the video. You are likely to get what the video is all about. Now, if you can easily access it, your child can easily access it as well. So it's out there, but here we are saying, no, I shouldn't be talking about this. Now, several times, what I usually call a problem is the failure to acknowledge what is private when it comes to children and treating it as the way it's supposed to be treated. There is one of the popular songs. I usually sing this because it's easier for me to be able to communicate to parents and let them know what it is that I want to talk about. Any of you knows a song which goes head, shoulder, knees, and toes? Any of you knows it? Good, 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 good. Now, the song head, shoulder, knees, and toes does not say head, shoulder, breast, and buttocks, you know? And the reason why we don't say head, shoulder, breast, and buttocks is because from way back, people identified what is supposed to be treated as private and acknowledged it as private. So children got to know what is supposed to be treated as private and acknowledged it. And so all the children were aware of that. Why am I saying this? We need to know what is private and let our children know what is private so that if somebody touches what is not public, a child is supposed to know this is not public. And therefore, a child is able to know what to report, where I was touched, you know? And these are things that can start early. When your child who is 5 years old, 6 years old, they're bathing themselves, do you give them an opportunity to bathe their privates? For instance, you want to bathe their entire body, but can you give them an opportunity to bathe their private, you know, so that they know I am in control of this, you know? And therefore, if I come to tell you somebody has hurt me, it's very easy for me to point out where I've been hurt and how I've been hurt, you know? And usually that's where the problem is. We do not know, we have not been able to help our children put the boundaries, you know? If you look at statistics, you'll find that majority of the sexual abuses that happen are perpetrated actually by our close relatives, and only 10% is by the strangers, you know? Now, we have children who are in there. I read something that you shared earlier, Miriam, and you were talking about the siblings, usually the sexual interfaces with siblings. You know, it's true that what happens most of the times is that a parent is going to say, oh, well, my children do not go out. I don't let them go out. You know, they don't go for sleepovers. You know, I have separated boys' bedrooms from girls' bedrooms, and therefore they are safe, you know. But you see, this is, you are protecting them from strangers, not from the people that are within your home, you know, and therefore this is going to happen within there, and you have no idea about it, and they will not talk about it because these are things that don't come up. You know, as a family, we are close sex, we don't talk about that. You know, you do want to talk about sex, and mom hears you say that, chiboko, you know, because these are things that actually happen. But I want to give you an analogy. If hyenas attack a tribe or a herd of goats, if hyenas attack a tribe or herds of goats, in most cases, they are going to attack the most vulnerable or the weak. Now, in this case, who is the vulnerable or who is the weak? The vulnerable and the weak are these adolescents that have no idea about what is going on, that have no information whatsoever, that all they know is something that they've been able to teach themselves. Deborah earlier talked about peer pressure and reminded me of the things that happen in school. We have a lot of information that comes from our peers and it needs clarity, but it's never clarified on. No one can clarify on it, you know, because we do not, parents shun from this. You know, if you look at the practice that we have in Uganda, our practice is that, for instance, among the Baganda, a child is sent to a senga, something that I quite disagree with, and I will explain why. Who knows your child more than you know your child? You have lived with your child this entire time. And now you want your child to be taught about sexuality and sex, and you have sent your child to another person, you know? only because these are things that you are not in position to face. These are things you're not in position to talk about, you know. So we usually take away the opportunities that we have to talk about the things that we need to talk about, the responsibilities that we have to share these, you know, with our children. But how can we make it easier to, you know, talk about sex or sex development or anything to do with sex? You know, I say this over and over and over because I want us to know that there is no evil in talking about sex. You know, when it comes to your children, just need
Moses, your line is breaking. Moses, your line is breaking. If it's the internet, then you can put off the video and we can hear you as you speak.
By the time I'm done,
it's okay
you
now.
have an idea. The first way that would actually make it easy is normalize the situation. Can you hear me?
Yes, we can hear you now.
It's okay. Normalize the situation. What do I mean by normalizing the situation? In most cases, you're going to realize that you were once a child. You were once a child, or you were once an adolescent. You were once a lot easier if you can get to share these things with your children. Well, I went through this. When you normalize that, it becomes easier for the child to talk about these things.
Unfortunately, Moses, we have lost you. As we wait for Moses to come back, just a few things that he's mentioned.
Can you hear me?
Yes, we hear you now.
Okay, let me speak quick before it actually happens again. The other thing that we need to talk about, name the parts. Name the parts, do talk about them. Can you hear me, Miriam?
Loud and clear, we hear you.
Okay, now name the parts. It is very important for us to name the parts. And of course, this information of how we are supposed to name the parts, this is something that happens chronologically. I know that there are make-up names that we usually come up with, and that is okay. But what kind of make-up names are we coming up with? I have had a mentorship where I had boys. And so we were going through body hygiene, and a boy was trying to let me know how he cleans himself. And then eventually in there, he talked about, eventually I clean Uncle Tom. So I'm thinking to myself, who is Uncle Tom? And the boy points at his penis. And I'm thinking to myself, so that's Uncle Tom? So in my engagement with the parent, I spoke to the parent and I'm like, okay, it is very possible that you are going to be meeting the human Uncle Tom in this boy's life. He's likely to meet the human Uncle Tom. But here we are, the makeup name that we have come up with for the penis, for your son's penis, is Uncle Tom. This is going to get confusing as time goes by. It's going to get confusing. Can you come up with realistic? I mean, there is one common one that I usually hear parents use, which is susu. You know, now a private part is called susu, and its function is actually susu. So it's easier for you to transition from that and now start calling it what it really is, because from the beginning, the child knows this is susu and it does susu. So as the child grows, it's very easy for you to now start talking about it being a penis, because the name you gave it wasn't too far from what it really is, you know? So this, I have seen it as a problem. Name the part. Let the children know the part and let them be aware. I have seen parents punish or scold their children when they do talk about relationships, when they do talk about anything to do with their private part, or somebody comes to you and then says, hey, mom, I have a swelling, or I have an itching on my penis or on my vagina. And a parent goes like, go talk to your auntie, go talk to your uncle. You have taken away an opportunity that is dear for you. You have taken away an opportunity. And unfortunately, this might not stop with you because somebody else is going to grab that same opportunity and utilize it in the best way they know how. Now, when they utilize it in the best way they know how, these are the circumstances where we find our children being misled. These are the circumstances where we find them go back to their peers. Deborah, you will agree with me when I say that adolescents or teenagers, they hold their peers as yardsticks. You know, whatever it is that they have to share is more important than what usually we have to share back at home. You know, now you have pushed them back. If they've come to clarify what it is that they've had, you've asked them to go back. You know, so we need to take the initiative to, you know, be at the front to share these things. It is also, now adolescents are also confusing because it's likely that an adolescent is going to want to say something to you or share something with you, but they want you to initiate it. Confusing, right? They want to say something to you, but they want you to be the one to initiate this conversation with them. Now, address appearances. You know, address appearances. Now, this makes it easier for you to know what to talk about when you look at the appearances, because it's out there. You know, unlike the primary characteristics, sex characteristics, the secondary sex characteristics are quite easier to, you know, to identify, because if it's the hips, they'll be out there. If it's the pubic hair, it will be out there. You know, if it's the broadening of the chest, it will be out there. The breast will be out there. The acne in the face, it will be out there. Address these appearances. You know, this could be the windows that you can use to talk about this information, to share this information. You know, I say this putting in mind how hard it is for you, for parents or caregivers to talk about these things, but identify that. Now, when you do identify that, you have created a window, you have initiated a conversation, and therefore they are likely to come back and share things with you because you have done this. If you don't do this, which has actually happened where parents haven't done this, I have a case that I've interfaced with. A 10-year-old girl had started developing pubic hair. You know, she had pubic hair, and when she developed pubic hair, she was not conversation with the mother. They did not have a dialogue with the mother. They weren't talking. And therefore, she moves from wherever she was, and she comes to the living room, and she starts shaving herself with a razor blade. Now, while she's doing this, everybody else is there. Now, this might seem insane to another person. It's something that you cannot comprehend. Now, the person who got to actually know about this was not the mother. The person who got to know about this was the auntie to the child, because the child went and spoke to the child, went and spoke to her auntie, the sister of her mother's sister, you know. And this is the person who now clarified, and she was shocked. The mother was shocked, learning that, oh, okay, my child has started developing pubic hair. I had no idea, you know. And I have several parents in that category. One, you tell that it is possible that at 10 or 12, your son might have his first ejaculation, which we usually call the wet dream, you know. And you have parents, oh, so my child is actually ready for something like that. This can happen, but the only way not to be caught off guard is by initiating. Because I told you these are some of the things that already start 3-6 years. This is already beginning, and by the time the child hits the puberty stage, they already have a lot of information about these things that is going on, you know. The other thing that that is also important for me to talk about is the setting within which we can talk about sex, or we can initiate this when it comes to our children. You know, most parents think that, some parents wonder, should it be formal? Should it be informal setting? You know, is there any way? Again, go back to dialoguing with your child. Now, I'll give you a tip, which tip that also happens and is good when it comes to husband and wife. Wives on here, the best where you can have information from your husband is when there is an activity that is going on, is when there is something that the two of you are doing and is engaged in that. You are going to get information from them. Now, let me relate this to the children. If there are activities that you're doing with your children and they are engaged, you are going to get information from them. Definitely, they are going to open up. They are going to talk about it. Psychologically, people tend to open up and share information when they are preoccupied with something, you know, and before they know it, they've said a whole lot of things, you know. So should it be informal? No, I do not think it should be. It should be informal. If you want it to be formal, no, I don't think it should be formal. I think it should be informal. There are circumstances where this can be formal. For instance, there's information that can be held in schools, you know, and even this information held in schools is held according to the developments of the developments children have. For instance, there's general information that we usually give menstruation, you know. There will be formal arrangements at school for people to talk about menstruation, but do not wait for people to help you talk to your children about sex. Do this yourself. Do this. It should be something that you do yourself. Yes, there's a lot that we can do, we can get to do share about, but I thought that I will not be able to stand here and exhaust everything and talk about everything that there is there to say. But I thought that it would be important because looking at the chat room, there's a number of questions, and I thought that we would be able to use this opportunity and respond to questions and have the listeners, the people that are part of the meeting, direct the rest of the discussions where they would want information or more information about. Thank you.
Thank you very much, Moses. That was excellent. I believe it's going to be a starting point for many parents who are afraid of letting their children know that they also had mistakes along the way. So thank you very, very much for that. I think two key things that you've spoken that I want to echo again is, one of them is not overreacting. When we hear our children saying something or we see them doing something, we need to allow ourselves a few seconds to think about how we're going to react. I remember when one of my children was 5 years old, her brother was disturbing her, and she told him to F off, using the F word. And so the older brother came running to report because this was a big thing. So I asked her and said, you know, that word you're using, where did you hear it from? And she said, oh, my friend in school said, if someone is disturbing you, it's the quickest way to tell them to stop. So she used it absolutely innocently. If we had reacted by shouting at her or beating her, we would have lost an opportunity. The other thing that I want to echo that you've said is finding out where your child is. One time we were going to talk to the older two, the almost 10-year-old and the 12-year-old about crushes. And so we asked the younger two to give us space. But when they were going, the 7-year-old overheard that we were going to talk about crushes. And she said, but I also know about crushes. So we asked her, so what is a crush? She said, a crush is when you love someone as if you want to marry them. So we said, you know what, come and join the conversation. She was ready to hear something about crushes. Of course, they're watching this on TV, hearing their friends. So it's really important, find out where your child is instead of giving them a didactic discussion. So talking about didactics, I'm going to move now to the audience. We have about 5 minutes and we're going to answer some questions. So I'd invite Dr. Sabrina, Dr. Deborah, and Moses, if there are questions on the chat that you want to address, this is the time. And people listening, 1 to 3 people, you can put up your hand and we'll unmute you and ask you to ask your question on air. So you put up your hand if you have a question. If not, we shall go to the chat and answer questions that are already there. Okay, I see someone called Hopeful. Hopeful, please unmute yourself and ask a question. Someone called Hopeful.
Yes, thank you, Doctor. This is just a suggestion to our counselors that as they go about their work, would they please add self-worth to the counseling, especially to the girls? The issue of sexuality and the issue of sex as in general is more of it bends more on our girls, on our females than the boys, because the way they treat themselves, the way they dress, the way so things to do with self-worth. How worthy am I? How do I dress? How do I treat myself as me? So I believe sexuality mostly, the issues of sex are mostly so bent towards the girl child than the boy. So I would request that the issue of self-worth is addressed.
Thank you very much for
Thank
that.
you.
Miriam,
Yeah.
Miriam, I'd like to say something to that
Yes, please go on.
from Hopeful. And this is a mistake we are making as parents, that we are putting a lot of emphasis on the girl child and forgetting that the boys are going to be their future husbands. I think that the self-worth and the skills building sessions should be addressed to both boys and girls.
Yes.
Today we are seeing young men who are so dependent on sugar mummies, and they have no self-worth. They could sell their body for a shirt. So I think that we need to engage both boys and girls and ensure that our children are empowered and they are confident and they know what is going on. I'll use this with a question from someone who asked in the chat that her daughter is very shy about this entire conversation. And this was what I answered her in the chat room, that I'm very proud of her, and I think it's special that she's watching and listening to this discussion with her 13-year-old daughter. It just shows that they are friends and that they can even, you know, be on the same phone or video, I'm not sure what they are using, to listen to this conversation. And this is the beginning of future dialogue, like Moses said.
Absolutely. Thank you very much, Dr. Sabrina. Before Dr. Robert asks his question, there's a question on the chat. The person says, can we talk about the LGBTQ issue in our society right now? So Samuel, thank you for asking this question, but this is a huge topic, and I think we should organize another session for this. It is going to be most likely a debate. But if one of the presenters wants to say something briefly about it, please feel welcome to do so. And then we shall go on to the next question.
Thank you so much, Miriam. I like that Dr. Sabrina has responded to engaging boys as well. I think it's really important for us to engage boys. Some of the questions I've been seeing in the chat is, I'm a three-year-old child, 6-year-old child. How are you going to have a conversation with them? And I did mention in the chat that at Safe Haven Child and Family Counseling Center, we actually have developed a kit that we use to be able to help children, developmental appropriate, is how do you communicate to a child? You know, boundaries, how do I become assertive? How do I learn about boundaries for both parents and children? And it's developmental appropriate and it's sequential, so that at any age we are able to engage children and equip them. Because I know it is very difficult for parents to say, how do I start? So we are able to help you with that process of how do I start for both your children and parents as well to be involved. And I like that you've mentioned that the working with LGBTs, definitely in our culture, there are a lot of cultural issues and questions, but young people are struggling as well with their sexuality. You know, it is more of, sometimes it's experimentation, sometimes it's like, I don't know who I am. So all these things are happening. And it may be something like you say, you want another day for have a conversation, but it's something that we need to reflect on as well, is what is happening in our context as a country. How do we help our young people when they're struggling as well and asking themselves, and they're exploring their sexuality. Yeah. I think the important thing is just have a conversation with them, apart from keeping them away completely.
Right. And that's a very good point,
really
Deborah.
helpful. Yeah.
Yeah. Because one thing I've found out with the parents I've interacted with whose children have been expelled from school for engaging in gay or lesbian relationships is they've overreacted. They've not asked the child where this came from. So we miss a lot in between there. So you've never spoken to your child about sexuality. Now they've been expelled for this, and suddenly you are all up in arms. So it needs to be a discussion. And once again, there are counselors that are available. Go to these places, meet them, and have an honest, open discussion.
And we need more
Let's
time.
have Dr. Robert ask a question. Dr. Robert, unmute yourself and ask your question. Okay, maybe he's not there. So, so just to wind up, let's. I'm going to ask the three.
I've said this for a long time.
Please mute yourself if you're. I'm going to ask the three panelists to tell us about some of the services that they offer. Let's start with Dr. Sabrina, who heads the Friday Adolescent Clinic at Makerere University. And as they begin to talk, very importantly, I want parents to know that let's not wait until there is trouble before we access these services. Let's not stigmatize accessing psychological help. It's a good point to start, it's a good place to be, and it helps you either get the conversation going or find out areas that we need to address. So Dr. Sabrina, please tell us about the Friday Adolescent Clinic. You're muted.
Hello?
Let me unmute.
Hello?
Dr. Moses, just a minute. We're having Dr. Sabrina say something.
Okay, so the Friday Adolescent Clinic is now a 6-year-old clinic that runs in Mulago Hospital. It's managed by colleagues from Makerere University and Mulago, and it's a free clinic. Someone asked me if they attend a clinic on Zoom. No, we don't do clinic on Zoom. We actually see the clients. Many of them come in because they want to be vaccinated. They are asking questions. I know that one of my former clients, she joined the clinic when she was about 14. She's now at the university, and I'm so proud of her. She's studying law, and she's with her mother on this session today. So kudos to you, and I'm so proud of you. When the patients come to the adolescent clinic, we use anticipatory guidance, and we encourage them to go through a safari of life and understand that we are on their side at all times. We encourage the parents to mitigate through conflict. We encourage the parents to talk to their adolescents. But as you can see from what Dr. Miriam shared, this is our flyer. The services we offer include immunization. We talk about sexual and reproductive health. We talk about nutrition, school health, career choices. It's a lot. And we have specialists. We have pediatricians. We have a social worker. We have counselors. We are able to refer to a psychiatrist. And I'm so happy to say here that Moses Mpanga was one of our counselors when the clinic started. He's now grown and he's gone off to start his own practice. So please send us your patients, send us your children, and do come with them, because some parents are still learning how to be parents, and we'll be happy to help you. Thank you.
Thank you very much, Dr. Sabrina. And a word to the parents who are listening. Our role as counselors, doctors, mentors, and coaches is not to abduct your child from you. We are really just trying to help you in this parenting journey. Most parents fear to come to us because they say, you're going to start talking to our kids about things they don't tell us about, and we're not going to know. So we are not an abduction service. We're just helping each other in this journey of parenting. Let's hear from Moses, the parenting guide. Please unmute yourself, Moses. Moses, unmute yourself, please. Okay.
Can you hear me?
Yes, we can.
I am a proud member of the Adolescent Clinic, you know, and I'm glad to be sharing this platform with you, Dr. Sabrina, and everybody else.
Thank you, Moses.
Before I go on, I want to mention something very brief, and it comes from what Dr. Sabrina talked about when it comes to addiction. Dr. Sabrina, you talked about addiction and how it comes up. I have a very brief one, because I have a very brief scenario to share, because I think it's important for parents to know about it. I have a case of a 9-year-old boy, and this boy is actually addicted to pornography at his age, 9 years. Every phone he touches, he goes to porn. Every computer he touches, he goes directly to pornography. And how has this been able to develop? This boy, usually whenever the mother forgets maybe sandals, and goes to the bathroom without the sandals, the mother sends the boy to come and bring those sandals to her in the bathroom. Now, what the mother is doing is definitely innocent. But, as the child gets to see the near nakedness of the mother, this is all information that he has no idea how to process. He doesn't know what to do with it. And therefore, he goes and rushes out at the nearest window he gets at seeing something that looks like what he saw, and he delves into pornography. And that has been how this child has started to get into pornography. Fortunately, we've managed to break this. Why am I sharing this? Because I feel it is important for parents to know sometimes you look so far away as to the reason why your child is the way he is, or how the addictions came up. That's the way it happens. I'm a clinical psychologist, and I am the founder of the Parenting Guide. This is an umbrella or a platform where we do work hand in hand with parents, and it's where we give parents a platform, parents and children, a platform to freely discuss the discussions that we are having right here. We usually have them under the Parenting Guide. I realize that parents sometimes know what they have to do, and all they need is a little push, and once the push has been done, they definitely can take the driver's seat and go on. Once I realized that, I knew that it's important for us to empower these parents, which we are doing right now, because we know we are not going to be there throughout your entire time as you're parenting your children. So that is what this umbrella is for. I also work with Joy for Children, and under Joy for Children, I am with the children. I'm the children's development consultant. So I am glad to be here. I'm glad to work with adolescents. I'm glad to work with parents. Thank you.
Thank you very much, Moses. And for those who want to hear more about addiction, last month our session was on addiction, and it's on YouTube. If you want to get the link directly from me, just send an email to CARE360 and we'll link you to the YouTube video or the full discussion on addiction. Let's hear from Deborah. Tell us about Safe Haven, Uganda.
Thank you so much, Miriam. Thank you, everybody, for joining in. Like Miriam has mentioned, again, I'm Dr. Deborah Ojiambo. I'm the director of Safe Haven Child and Family Counseling Center. We are located at Ntinda. We do provide counseling services. We work with children. Actually, the first clients that we have are from the age of 2.5 years. And what I've noticed through my work, unfortunately, many of the children I've worked with below the age of 4 have been sexually abused. So we are talking about something that is happening in our families, in our communities in this country. So we provide counseling for children who are below the age of 8, for pre-adolescents, for teens, all that developmental appropriate. And then we also work with families. We provide a range of services. It might be assessment, a child is struggling with learning, we provide that as well. It might be changes within the family. We provide services to help children cope with whatever changes are happening. It might be just developmental issues that the child is struggling with, or behavior issues that the child is struggling with, or just health concerns. So whatever issues that are happening for children, we do provide counseling for children right from the age of 2.5, adolescents, young adults, families, people in organizations as well, broad range of services that we do. And one of the things that I was mentioning is we also do preventive counseling, prevent children from getting sexual abuse, prevent children from being addicted to alcohol and drugs. So we provide service as well in that category for young people so that they're able to be helped. We also work with schools to support schools, be able to teachers, give them skills on how they can work with their children much better. Because when you have a teacher who is informed and equipped, your children are much better. And definitely we have parenting sessions as well. One of the therapies we love providing is child-parent relationship therapy that equips you to be able to connect with your child as you discipline your child, a very powerful process. So we do that as well with the parents, is equipping them And we do have group sessions for children, give them those skills I talked about, problem solving, decision making, being able to develop their self-worth and self-esteem. So those are some of the things we do at Safe Haven. We are in Ntinda, Semawata Road, and you'll enjoy our place when you come to visit us. Thank you so much.
Thank you very much.
With everybody.
Thank you very much, Deborah. So they have shared their contacts on the chat. However, if you need their contacts and haven't got it, just send me a WhatsApp or send me an email and I will link you to them. I know some of you got in touch even before this meeting and I've been sharing you their contacts with you. Please remember, reach out to these people. We're not here to abduct your children. We're here to help you in the parenting journey. Just quickly about CARE360 for those who have not heard about it before. So with CARE360, we do mentoring and life coaching. So this is not a counseling service, it's mentoring and life coaching. What do I mean by mentoring? We mentor especially young people to help them realize that they have the power to make the right decisions. So in different aspects of their lives, we help them make the right decision during this critical period where their brains are developing. We take advantage of the use it or lose it theme. And we help young people make decisions, different aspects of their lives. It may be their personal management, developing plans, life goals for themselves, independent learning, whatever it is, we help with that. And then in terms of coaching, we do this for both young people and adults. So with coaching, we help people when they're having issues to work out how to get to the solution themselves. Sometimes we have had to refer people to counseling or even to psychiatry, but through a journey of helping them realize that they need that help. And so that has really proved to be very useful, and you're welcome to get in touch for more information. So I want to thank you all for joining us. The activities that we have for CARE360, in October, we have another e-meeting, and we're going to look at understanding and navigating puberty. A lot of parents whose children are who are not yet adolescents say, what about us? I've even had children and my own children saying, when is our meeting? So in October, we are going to deal with puberty, how to handle it and how to navigate it. And this is going to be a session for both parents and for their children as well. And then in October, we are starting our second mentoring young mind session. We are concluding one in 2 weeks, but the next one is going to be called independent learning. And we are taking only 10 scholars because we are going to have a lot of hands-on sessions. So this is to help young people, especially this time that they are on an extended holiday, to become independent learners, to learn how to teach themselves in the absence of the actual physical school. So thank you very much for attending. Dr. Sabrina, Deborah, and Moses, is there any parting word that you have to the listeners? Let's start with Deborah, then Dr. Sabrina, and then Moses.
All I can say is thank you so much, participants and everybody. And I want to say connection is important before correction. Before we correct our children, it is important to connect with them. And children's behavior is a reflection of what is happening for them. Let's connect with them before we correct them. Have a lovely evening. Thank you, everybody.
Thank you very much, Deborah. Let's, Dr. Sabrina, parting words.
My parting shots, thank you so much. And let's keep this conversation going. Like I always say, please use your own ABCD strategy. Mine is ask for what you want, be who you say you are, care about others, and dare to live your dream. Our children are our future. Let us nurture them to achieve their fullest potential. Thank you.
Amazing. Thank you very much, Dr. Sabrina. And finally, Moses.
Yes, thank you so much, Dr. Miriam. My last remark is, if the hyena attacked goats, like I shared earlier, make sure that it's not your child who has been attacked. Make sure that it's not your child who is the vulnerable one, who is the weak one, and therefore speak with your child, empower your child so that your child is safe. And if the hyenas come to attack, your child is among the ones that are going to survive. Right. Thank you very much.
Thank you very much, Moses. And people who have listened in, I know you've learned a lot, and please share this message. because our children are going to end up marrying some of those children whose parents may not have been here. So share this message, let the message go around, and let's have a healthy community, healthy children, and healthy relationships between parents and children. So thank you very much. I'd request you to, those who can, to open their video so we can see you and have a party photograph together. Don't mind whether you have a headband on or whatever, just let's see you. Gladys, Irene, I see all of you. It looks like the majority of our listeners are shy. Okay. Okay, I'll take a photograph before we go. Thank you very much. This is going to be on YouTube and you can have access to it. I will share the link with you. And once again, thank you very much for joining us today. We'll see you again next month. Dr. Sabrina, Dr. Deborah, and Moses, it's been a great honor having you, hearing from you, hearing the things you do and learning from you. Have a good evening and a lovely weekend.
Cheers, have a good weekend.
Okay, bye-bye.
Thank you, everybody. Bye.
Welcome. Bye, everybody.
Bye.
Bye, and thank you.
Thank you for appreciating. Bye, everybody.